Hi guys, I'm Raju, SAP BO trainer for you. So welcome to my SAP BO online tutorial. So in this series of videos, we are learning about complete business object reporting tool environment. So if you see my previous video, we discussed about the SAP business objects, the introduction part. And in this video, we're going to learn what the business object and what the different things we do in the business environment. So we'll see all this environment and things. So in this business objects, we call as BO, BG also, both are same. Nothing but SAP business objects. So it's a reporting tool in which we're going to see all the reporting environments. So if you talk about SAP business object, it's a purely reporting tool in which the record will not be stored. It's just a repository, never holds any data, but it just holds the structure. We can do all those activities at one place. So in this section, in this video today, we'll learn the concept of universal topic. We go for the universe, what is a universal design tool and how it's going to happen. Okay, so today we learn the topic called universal design tool. So before starting this universal design tool, I'll show you the architecture of SAP complete business objects. So if you talk about here, this is my BO business object, which has a repository. Under repository, we have three different layers. One is user domain, universal domain, document domain, in which this supports all the major databases. It may be SQL Server, Oracle, SAP systems, non-SAP systems. So if you want to create a report on this different reporting tools, in that case, first we need to go with the universal design tool. So this is a universal design tool. It's semantic layer in which the report will be generated, and it will be useful to connect the expert of their databases to get the data and format the data as a classes, object, measure object, and we say the file the .unv extension, and the file will be exported to universal. So in this video, we are learning the topic called this universal design tool in which the report will be generated. As well as we have a lot of information on this reporting tool which shows all the reporting environments. So here if you talk about the WebI, when the report will be generated, we need to create a report on those reporting tools based on this reporting environment. So here the universal design tool plays a major role in which it establishes a connection between the expert of their databases, getting the data, doing some calculation on those data, and the file just convert as a small file that is called .unv, and the same file will be exported to the repository. From there, we need to import the same file, and the report will be generated. That is secondary. Anyways, that we'll see in the future videos. So in this video, we're going to learn what's a topic called universal design tool. So let's start with the topic called universal design tool. So if you talk about here, the universal design tool, so we simply call as UDT. So in this, what happened here, it's kind of a semantic layer. It's kind of a semantic layer which has the connection to the expert of data database. So it has semantic layer which has three layers. I want to create a report on the SAP HANA. So in SAP HANA, we have two ways. One is that it has the data will be stored in the table format as well as view formats. First, I'll create a connection to SAP HANA to my universal that we'll see practically. I'll try to import the tables from SAP HANA. I'll bring one single table now, and this table will be converted as classes and objects. Again, objects are field, nothing but which may has measure object, which may has detail level objects, and it may be dimension objects. So we will see what is all this stuff, and the file will be saved with a .unv extension which we may export to the repository. Once we export a file, we create a report on the same file. First we'll see what a topic called universal design tool and all the stuff, and we'll see a simple scenario of single like getting a single data. Later on we'll get the multiple tables and we'll join them, and we'll see some other options. So I'll show you what how we can do this universal design tool. So here we have universal, which is nothing but okay. So in this universal design tool, first we need to create the parameter. We need to define the parameter. Nothing but we need to create a connectivity. Suppose I am creating to SAP HANA, I need the username, password, server name, host name, and port number of SAP HANA. Once you have all this parameter, then we can, once you create a connections, then we can insert the data or tables from SAP HANA. Once you insert it, then we make a joins. If you are inserting multiple tables, in that case we need to provide the joins. That's called joins options. And here once the join is done, we need to resolve the loops. Why loops? Because if you have multiple tables are joining, then it will create a closed circle. For that we need to resolve the loops. Anyways, that we'll see the practical in the system. And we need to create a classes, which means the table name will be converted as a class name, and the fields in a table will convert as the objects. And we also have a setup here hierarchies. If we have a setup, we can make it. So what is the role of universals? So the role of the universal is to provide an easy to use and understand interface for a non-technical web intelligence user to run the queries against to the database, to create the reports and performs the data analysis. So for that case we have to use this reporting tool. And what the universals consist of? It consists of a class and objects. So what a class here? The class is a logical group of objects within the universal. So the class is called as logical group of objects within the universal. It represents the category of object. Similarly, we have objects. Nothing but an object is a name component that maps to the data or a derivation of the data in a database. So object is a place in which you can just component that maps the data, like we call as field name, it will make us name, age, address, all this we call as names. And what types of object? We have a dimension object, detail level object, and measure object. So dimension is a kind of a field, like if you talk about cust ID, mat ID, all those will come in the dimension. Detail level object like countries, year, all those stuff. Measure object will be like it may price, quantity, amount, sales, all those will come in the quantity part. So all this will come in the measure object. Next, what are universal use? So universal are used to the web user, in which the user may be stored in a CCM, we call a central management console, or we also call a central management system, we call CMC or CMS. So it's kind of a repository, and end user connects to a universal from a web portal, or we call it web browser also. So here there is option called exporting universal, which I taught previously. So you may universal, if you want to make any universal, are available for the web users as a designer by exporting the universal to a repository. If you don't export, the universal is not available, and all those guys cannot perform any activities. Similarly, we have when you export the universal will have to move from a selected universal folder to a repository file system. So it will not be copy, it directly move from a local system to a CMS, nothing but central management system, or we call a CMC. So each time the universal is exported to a repository, the version of CMC will be changed because updated. So this is a universal that available to a web intelligent user. So here when you make a saving of universal is not the same as the exporting the universal. So saving is in the local machine, but exporting is different. So we have to export. First we need to save the repository and a local machine, then we need to export. So but not the CMC repository version of a repository of a universal. Then when you create a connection, so if you talk about universal, we have the three types of connections. One is personal connection, shared connection, secure connection. So personal nothing but can be used only on the client, shared nothing but can be used by more than one user to send the queries to a target database from a shared server. So multiple user can be log in and they can share their work. secure. So, it is a preferable connection in which we can do in each and every project. So, secure connection is used when you used to distribute the completed universal to the user population via repository. So, this is how the connection will be happen. So, we get all these things, we need to choose the connection. Anyways, we will see this practically. So, this is all the parameters we defined, we have to here. So, in the definition, universal name we have to provide, description we need to provide, and the connection parameter and information will be provided on the definition of a system. Then, in the summary information, we need to provide the versions, revision, information, design comments, and universal statistics will be provided on the system. We have a statistics, nothing but indicates the statistics which used by universal, and we have a strategy script used to extract the structural information from the database, which controls all the limited for the set of systems. And of course, we also write some SQL queries on this business objects on a topic called universal design tool. We write some settle query panel which can perform some conditions, or if you want to do any runtime calculations, if you want to perform any activities, those will be done in this part. So, once you done here, we have to add the tables. So, we can add the tables from the export of the databases. This is how we can add the table. Once you add a table, we may get the multiple hierarchies things, like we can combine those tables with the multiple join types, and we can prefer. So, creating a universal reports, we need to begin the new universal things. We need to start the file and make it new connection. To access the universal parameter, we get an option called existing file. Then we need to choose a file parameters. Then click on that icon button called create. This is how you can get. So, we have to get the begin option. Then we need to provide the universal name. If you want to wish to create a new connection, click on this new button. As if the connection is already established, then choose from the drop down box, then next. So, what a connection actually? We have to give a definition, but a connection is a link from a universal to the target database. This link achieved using a middleware like ODBC or JDBC connectivity. Okay, and the existing connection may used or a new connection created for the universal. Like we can also create a new connection, or else we can also use existing one as I showed you earlier. So, there are three types of business object connections. The difference are is one is personal connection, can be used by client. One is shared connection, can be used by more than one user to send the queries to a target database from a shared server. And we have one is secure connection. This connection is be used when you wish to distribute the completed universal to other repository via things. If you want to create a connection, we have to click that button called create a connection, new. Then we have to choose a middleware. It may be a ODBC or JDBC or SAP, any connectivity. Then we need to provide all those details like username, the DB name, all those connections. Once it's done, we need to choose the axis. In the advanced connection options also, we can choose the connections, keep the connection for during a whole section. This is all we can provide all the stuff. Okay, and if you want to define any parameters, we can define the parameters of connectivities. So, in the summary tab, we can just give the author name about the universal topics. We need to provide all those information things. So, in the strategy tab, we can provide the internal or personal wizard to creating a universal part, and to control manager, we can access the data control for resources. So, all this will be we can do on these scenarios. Similarly, so we go for SQL tab, the queries and SQL tab parameter will be done here, and link tab we have enable dynamic links with other universal. So, this is how we can provide all the definition parameters, which provide the username, we provide the name of universal, description of universal, connection name, then press OK. So, universal define is identify with the username and connection with the database. We also add a description to the higher advantage. So, this is how we can set up the parameters which provide the automated strategy for system, which create the object, setting the joins, and the table browser will be listing, and we can do all those setup the parameters controls. This allows you to limit the size of the result and restrict the time allow for executing parameters. So, the supervision can be changed these parameters for specific groups or users that can happen. Similarly, we can set up some parameters like allow the sub queries, allow for union, interaction, like certain options will get those. If you want to do, we can perform those activities. So, SQL parameters are used to define the limited of SQL queries that may be generated by environment. So this supervisor can be changed this parameter for a specific group and users. So for saving universal, we have to say the universal is a maximum of 8 characteristics with up to 3 characteristics as an extension. This makes it possible to distribute the user which across the kinds of a computers. As well as you can choose a file as click and save. So default this shows in the C programs in the business objects. So you can change the default folder if you want to change, and you can save somewhere else. Okay. And for changing, you just click on this part and browse the path where you can see save. If you want to display existing connection, just click on the access the connection dialog box. We get all the list connection which are already established. We may use existing one, or else we want to create, we can also create a new one. So all these connections are available to display and modify or remove with the connections dialog box. So adding a table, we can just add a simple tables, we can just join them. A lot of modification we can perform all those things. So use the table browser, we can do it. We can add a double click on table structure, just click on that plus button, it will be inserted. We can insert multiple tables also, and we can browse the database. So we will see this practical sections on system. So how we can do drag and drop options, we get all those classes. Okay, these are all the dimensions objects which have dimensions, detail, measure object. So dimension means which provides the columns from database are key to a query. Detail means they are from the database that provides the detailed information which is related to dimension. Measure object consists of aggregated of product, and we have measure are grouped into a separate classes except where they can be used the part. So this is how we can perform all these activities. We can do creating a subclasses, editing those things, and all those environment will be done, and we can do all the manual settings. If you want to do any drag and drop function, use drag and drop functionality, columns in your classes, insert the object from other universal part. So if you want to go with any object properties, like we can provide all this default parameters, we can use the database names, we can add a description. All if you want to wish to write any SQL, we can also write a condition on the SQL part, and there is a button for next, and you get this option. And still, if you want to change any of the properties of parameters, we can change from here. We can change as measure object, we can change as detail, we can change as dimensions. And these are all the integrity to check. So it will check all the integrity before saving. So we have to do a testing on a designer and save the universal and follow cycles. So what a measure object is nothing but returns the numeric value information about system, which has a lot of information. It may be a measure object like price, quantity that comes in measure object. So they are created by the aggregated function. There are 5 basic aggregation functions, like we can do sum, we can do count, it can be aggregate, average, maximum and minimum. Okay. So we have manipulating of tables, like you can resize the table columns, we can move the columns into a table, we can change the titles of a columns, as well as we can move the whole table. Okay. Then we can save this as documents. How we can save? Just click on that button, it will resize the table. So we can resize the rows and columns as per the drag and drop functionality. So we can resize the column automatically by double click on the right side, and as we can resize the any row automatically, we can resize the heading rows also. All this will be happen automatically. When you make a double click, it will ask you to cell change. We can change the length, we can change the type. All this will be done on the requirement. As well, you can do all the runtime calculation on a particular field. It may be a summation, count, and we can do all those activities. So we get additional field like summation, percentile, we get filter, all this will be added here. So you can also add a percentage as per your requirement. Just click on this button called percentile, we'll get a percentile symbol. So counting the rows, if you want to count any rows, so count distinct the values only, count all the rows in the columns, including duplicate values and empty rows. If you wish to go with the counting distinct rows of a data, you can use a count function to count distribution systems and all the stuff. So use the count all the functions to count the systems, and we can perform all those activities. So we can do the 3 ways of sorting, like we can do ascending sorting, descending, as well as custom sorting also as per the requirement. So how we can apply the sorting? We just click on the button called that complete field, and we can choose ascending or descending sort, the icon from the tool table. If you want to wish to do custom sorting, then you click on custom, and we can apply the custom sorting based on the requirement. So, and if you want to do any joins, we can do joins of requirement. We can do the equi joins, we can do outer joins, we can do theta joins, we can do self restrictions joins as well. So in this join we have a lot of different types of joins here, guys. So we can find the equi join, we do have left outer join, and we can call the theta join. We also have the self restrictions joins, and there is a topic called shortcut join. So this kind of shortcut joins are useful to avoid some kind of a loops. So we have a lot of loop conditions in which we can perform those loop activities. So in this video, let's go with here how we can achieve these joins in the SQL part. So we have here, suppose I need to go over here. If you have a data like this one, regional name, country name, I want to sort this data. So if you take this query will be created on quick product if you want to continue. So I need the output like this one. So I need the output as country ID with the country name and with the other country IDs with the regional names. So if you need this kind of things, then in that case we can use a equi join to perform those kind of activities. So if you talk about previous one, it is not give the proper information if you use this kind of scenarios. But in the case of next slide, what we do have is we made a equi join to join these two tables with respect to country ID and country ID. So we got a proper information based on the data. And if you want to create, how we can do here, creating and deleting the inner join manually. So if we have a lot of time here, so we have joins can be entered manually with using two methods. We have graphically we can enter, which is can also we can write some SQL queries in order to perform those activities. So we within a menu options inserted here, we just mention the edit join option. We delete the join, we can write the join line or press delete option to perform those activities. If in the case of outer join, when you talk about outer join, nothing but if you want to get the data from the rather than the inner join, we have to get the outer joins. That's called outer join. So you have doing the setting of two different tables, which gonna map the country ID with the country ID. We gonna add the field of country name here to region name. So which perform all these activities at one place. And here all outer join is created by the converting a existing equi join. So here if you use the existing equi join, so they should be identically specified at the end of the table path, which specify in all the middle of a data path of all the subsequent joins. The path will be also specified as the outer join. And if you want to perform any activities on this series, here see if you talk about the theta join, which contains all the expressions that based on this something other than the equality. So it means that if you talk about here, this is my price range, which is a minimum value. This is the price range, which is a maximum value. So I have a data, the price range have a budget for less than equal to 20,000, and I do have luxury for 1 lakh and some other options here. But I need the output has this one, so I need a model numbers in which I perform certain price range. So I just make the theta join of this model price with this price range, which is minimum and maximum. So this model number will do the theta join of these two. It takes a minimum value of this one, maximum value of this one, and as a result will get a proper model numbers of this stuff. This is called a theta join. If you want to calculate the between the data, we need the betweens, we call as in between. In that case we have to use a theta join. Similarly, how to create a theta join, we have to choose the here table 1 with the model price, then table 2 we have to choose the two ranges and we can perform. If you take the real time scenarios, we have to calculate the what's the minimum age, like what's the minimum salary and maximum salary for a things. In that case we have to choose a minimum salary, maximum salary for employer numbers. Similarly, there is option called self restrictions joins, which is not called as joins at all actually, but this is method used to restrict some table based on the universal structure. We apply some filter as per requirement, but we don't do any restrictions on a joins. How to create it? We just create option called here and make it yes here, and we have to get this shortcut joins. So once you got here, so if the query includes the client and the country but not the region joins are still needed in the SQL part. So which is insufficient. So but joining country to be client directly creates the loops. So if you write directly a client here, what happened? We make phase the loop. So if you write like this one, instead of doing this loop, we can use the shortcut join. Simply edit the join and this is how we can get a shortcut join. So this shortcut join we can use, but I need the loop of like I want to connect the country ID to country ID so that I can get my country details, which is not possible using a reason. So I can go with a shortcut join. So it is not a loop actually, but it's a bear of existing contents which we added in the join. So if this join is not added under context, then we can use the shortcut join to just avoid the we resolve the loops. So we'll see this activities practically. So we have a lot of models here, and this is a we can do the joins cardinality, how we can show the relationship between the tables and the base of joins. Should be one or more, many or more. We have often called one to many relationship, as well as one to one relationship, as well as many to one relationship, as well as many to many relationship. Okay. So it is not be needed for the inner SQL query part, which we have some basic functionality things. So it is only required to resolve the loops and alternatively roots in the structure. So this is how we can make. There is often called detect. So it will just directly detect the automatically, which may perform all these activities at one place. So if we simply use this runtime functionality part, which get the automatically activated on this scenario. So this help us to get the environment on this part. So if you want to check the integrity, because integrity plays a major role, if you want need any activities on this any areas, in that case we have to go with the integrity. So this integrity will be help you to get the all the issues which we are facing in this part. So if there is no issues here, we can directly get my data easily. There is an advantage on this integrity. And once you done the part, we can do the testing also. So once you created the universal or any object for your universal, it must be expensive. Like we can do some multi-joins options, which is called multi-relationship queries, to check all the joins in the producing the SQL query output in date. Okay. So let's show you the practical sections how we can perform those joins options as per our requirement. So let us have a look on a basic scenario. If you want to perform any activities, then how this will be happen in a real-time environment. So you get me idea on this basic scenarios. So let's show you the practical sections on this universal design tool. So before that one, I'll show you here first. I'll show you the connectivity of SAP HANA. So we'll see one connection of SAP HANA. I'll try to get a SAP HANA connection, and I'll try to get one table from SAP HANA. Then let's show you how to get the data. It means that how to import the table from SAP HANA and how to join them, how to get a classes object, which is called measure object, dimensions and detail level objects. Then the file should be saved in the .unv format. Then we need to export the file to a corresponding data. So let's show you the practically how it will be happen in real time cases.